Today we have a GM 911 using mind flayers and their thralls.
Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and as usual, I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
You won't need to be a psychic to find your next D&D video if you use your telekinesis to hit that subscribe button.
And you won't need to know detect thoughts in order to know what Nerdarchy's thinking if you attune to that notification bell.
Alright, so we have a GM 911 we're going to jump into. Just real quick, hey, if you want to stay in tuned and touched with what's going on with Nerdarchy, did you know we have a newsletter? You can find out all the latest happenings with Nerdarchy, as well as get a free coupon for $9.99 worth of digital products over on our store. We do weekly updates over there, and you can even get a chance to game with Nerdarchy. There will be a link in the description below. With that, let's get into this GM 911.
All right, so this one came in from user Romilly. We kind of broke it down. It says, mind flayers in my world have turned some important NPCs in a city into thralls. So they want to know, how do you build encounters and adventures to identify them?
Right, and also they mean like a very specific type of thrall that gets brought up and mentioned in Volo's Guide to Monsters. And so we have to I feel like we have to kind of take a look at this as well before we can really dive into it. And also, at some point, we're going to want to kind of bounce back into like what kind of game we would actually kind of use this in. You know, first of all, let's start with that. What kind of game would you use mind flayers in? And, you know, is this the type of game your players are used to playing? Because when we're talking about thralls and the specific type of thrall, from Volo's Guide to Monster, it's going to be a very like intrigue and mystery heavy game, and if your players aren't used to that style of play, you may just throw them completely through a loop.
And you can't do in a session 0 of like a, hey, do you want to fight mind flayers and figure out, you know, what's going on, because you'll ruin the entire angle of the mystery if you spoil the fun. So you have to deliver this kind of sneakily, like, hey, as Dave says, you know, intrigue, mystery, problem solving. You know, you don't want to be going up against the mind flayers, because mind flayers are pretty potent unless you're running a very high level game. And at that point in time, you know, the powers that you would have access to kind of are easier to defeat, you know, the level of thralls that mind flayers would be having.
That being said, I feel like it's really easy to build up to this game where you're not actually fighting mind flayers initially. It's their minions, the machinations of what's going on. And, you know, they could use a lot of lower level monsters. And this is where you're going to start getting your clues and stuff. But I think before we dive into that a little bit more, let's talk about kind of like the elements of a mind flayer invasion. 3 elements of a mind flayer invasion. And this is where we're going to start with getting into the type of thrall that the Patreon was asking about.
So you're going to have your agents, your mind controlled, and, you know, your bona fide thralls. Now, technically, the agents and the thrall both break down into the Volo's Guide to Monsters, different types of thralls, but we wanted to separate them for ease of understanding. We've got 3 different types. We've got agents, mind controls, and thralls. So, Dave, do you want to, you know, go into more detail about what the specific agent is?
So, an agent could actually just be someone that they've hired. They've bought them, they paid for them. They don't actually care what the mind flayers are up to, what the illithids do. They're just dirty, underhanded, and as long as they're being paid, they're more than willing to work with them. So really, this could be anybody as long as they have a price.
You know, I think this is incredibly useful. I think it's a little bit more rare for the mind flayers to be willing to, you know, operate, you know, with coin, or, you know, whether it be information or what have you. You know, most of the time they're looking to just mentally subjugate those lesser beings.
There are some advantages, though, to having someone that is willing to work for coin. For instance, you can't, they haven't been tampered with. You can't detect any psionic energy coming off of them, or magic if magic's been used. You know, they're just straight up normal people who just have a loose moral compass.
That's very true, which is why I said it's rare. You know, not just it doesn't happen.
So mind control, this is really simple. They've been dominated by a mind flayer or some other creature, but here's the problem with the mind control. They might not have as much free will, so they may not be able to follow the scope of the intent of the instructions given by their overlords. So this becomes problematic because they're not going to think quickly on their feet. You might be able to detect that they've been altered. It's going to be clear they're not working at their normal capacity. So these are a lot easier to detect, but they're also easier to make and easier to control.
You know, with that ease of control, with that you must follow these explicit instructions, that is going to make it so much easier for the players to notice when something is going on, especially if there's someone that they have actually encountered before. So like if you want to do this intrigue style game, if you've begun noticing that, oh, you know, Bob the blacksmith has all of a sudden not really cared about smithing anything, and he is trying to acquire information or kidnap someone, or, you know, any number of other things that are going to move the machinations of what the mind flayers are trying to uncover, you know, unlock or do. That's going to make it easy for the players to encounter, which means these kind of things have to be, you know, they have to follow very exact instructions. Mind flayers are intelligent. You know, they are superhuman brains, essentially. So they are going to outthink, you know, your players in a lot of cases, but they're going to be on par with the intelligence of, you know, your party's wizard, you know, when you're encountering these. So you technically might have the capability of, you know, matching wits with them.
So now the straight up Thrall, this is like the best of all the worlds, because one, the mind flayers have instilled loyalty to them. They can communicate with them, and they're undetectable by magical means. And not only that, much of the personality of the original person is still there, especially if you have mind flayers that are a little bit more advanced at doing this technique. You know, there's this whole process where they psychically bombard someone for 48 hours. It requires the will of the whole colony. Only one mind flayer is doing it, but they're like channeling their power into this one mind flayer, at least some of their psychic energy. That mind flayer bombards someone for 48 hours, strips away everything that person is, breaks them down, reduces their intelligence, gives some of their intelligence back, and then puts some of their personality back. Now, there are some mind flayer colonies that are so good at this, they can actually leave the full personality intact, making it even more difficult for someone to discern that they've been tampered with and have become a mind flayer Thrall.
So this Thrall breaks it down into two different processes. You know, the one where the personality is intact, but they are a bona fide servant, and they care about doing what's there. The other one, you know, is a less sophisticated version where you are merely a body that has it, and that's the only semblance that you have with your former self. You have become you've become this conscript of the mind flayers, and you are whoever they say you are. They will build up memories, they will build up personality, and they will be whatever you want. Now, it could very well be they instill some of who you were, or not, depending upon what they want to do. But Romilly was specifically looking for more the type where the personality is intact, because, you know, those things are going to be the hardest to detect when Bob the blacksmith is caring about his normal shop business, but on the sly is doing things to help out the mind flayer. Those are the kind of adventures and encounters that he's really looking for.
Yeah, using that, you know, we can kind of take things from there and go, well, one is, how will the players ever be able to figure this out? Two, if they do, can they reverse this effect? Can they fix the Thrall? And the answer is yes. It's just very difficult.
So the process actually takes 3 days and requires significant amount of spell power and specific spells. You're going to have to be able to cast Heal, Greater Restoration, and Regeneration upon the person every day for 3 days straight in order to undo this, you know, psychic bombardment that has happened. So you need a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th level spell to reverse this process. So yeah, you need to be a considerable caster.
Now, let's like kind of get into the heart and meat of, you know, the question here, right? How would you build encounters so that it's going to lend itself to the players, you know, working their way through this intrigue and these mysteries?
So for me, what I would wind up doing is I would have this be like an overarching plot that is, for the beginning, is merely only a subplot. So whatever you have working as your grandiose thing of, well, we're going to fight we're going to call it a boss, but for us it's really like our mid-boss. And every time they go back to this town, there's the chance for them to pick up on information. We want them to encounter regular NPCs routinely and give them the chance to notice something that is outside the norm. Hey, Sally the barmaid always seems to, wear a yellow scarf. Well, the last 3 times we've come into town, the scarf is red or the scarf is not there, or, whatever. Small things, and see if they wind up picking up on them. And when they do, that can finally begin the actual investigation into what is really going on in this town.
Well, so not only that, right? Before we can even get into like building actual encounters, we have to kind of like figure out some things first. And those things are like, how do you notice the problems? Like you started bringing that up already. If we can kind of look at what is the Mind Flayer colony's goal, because they've invested a lot of effort and energy into infiltrating this particular community. So why do they want to do it? What are they trying to do? So once you can start answering that question, then from there, you can kind of start determining, well, what is it they need the Thrall to do? There's a couple things we already know, right? We know that this person, whoever they made their Thrall, has to disappear for like 2 days. We know they have to be with their Mind Flayer handler the whole time. Now, if that person was abducted and taken to the colony and then brought back, they might be gone for even longer unless the Mind Flayers have a way to immediately transport them to and from, like teleport or something of that nature. Obviously, it's a fantasy game. That could easily happen. Or you might decide they don't. So, instead of being gone 2 days, maybe they have to be gone 4 or 5 days. So that's a thing. Or the other solution is maybe they did it right there at the NPC's home where they would be encountered. So an investigation of said home might reveal some strange things. They might find in the basement a strange wooden chair with straps to restrain someone. Maybe it's got a funny bowl over it that looks like it's in a position where we just lower on someone's head with wires and tubes and crystals. Maybe somewhere's nearby, there's some kind of psychic contraption that is used to transport or transmit all that harnessed psychic energy from the Mind Flayer colony to this particular Mind Flayer while he's going or she's going or it's going through the process of creating the Thrall. So that could be a clue. But before you'd even get to that, we need other things to happen. Like, why would the players even want to investigate this NPC's home, especially if it's a friendly NPC or an acquaintance or a friend of a friend? Well, I think that takes you to what's going on with the Mind Flayers. What are they trying to do? If this character is working for them, I feel like at some point they're going to have to break character in order to fulfill the wishes of their masters. And those are going to be the clues that are going to tip off NPCs and player characters.
So I think one of the things that, really is going to come up is you're going to have to deal with the fact that people have gone missing. People have been asking a lot of questions. And whether you're talking about one specific Thrall, maybe there's multiple running around town, depending upon how perverse you want, this incursion to be, how much you want the Mind Flayers rooted in this, city, colony, what have you. The situation is going to be, dire the more Thralls and the more people you have working, because they're going to be working efficiently and, subtly to some extent. So you're looking for, adventures, encounters where the players have to notice what's going on. Things are out of place. People are asking too many questions. People are going missing. If adventurers come into town, perhaps someone begins asking, oh, can you look into this matter? Can you look into that matter? So all of these little quests could possibly lead you down this, winding rabbit trail until you finally get to the home where legitimately, you find this chair, you find this, psychic device, and then, only then, can the pieces begin to unravel, and you to see, how far these threads go, and they go all the way down to the Underdark.
Yeah, you might have like several existing Thralls, but during the investigation itself, someone the players have been interacting with may disappear, right? So they might be able to figure out the clues of, oh, they were taken. Maybe someone saw them taken back to the original Thrall's home, because that's where the Mind Flayer is conducting all of all of their conversions, right? So it's one place that they can discover. Before that, they might even break up an attempt of the Mind Flayer trying to snatch someone, and maybe they're just using regular thugs that grab people off the street, bring them back there, and become Thralls. Literally, that could be the very first thing that happens if you wanted to, is a prominent person in the city, town, whatever, this community is trying to get kidnapped, or they're trying to kidnap them. The players wander onto the scene, they break it up, they save that person, and this might be the beginning where they're like, oh, I don't know who to talk to, I don't know where to go, but you're outsiders, you're new, and you obviously helped me, so maybe these adventurers are the person they open up to and be like, my friend George has been acting a little strange. I can't quite put my thumb on it, but all of a sudden, he's part of the city council and he wants to do this thing that doesn't seem like something he would normally do. But everything else other than that is just fine. And, they're not able to turn anything up. That would give you a starting point. It gives you a regular type of an encounter. Did any of the players take any of the thugs alive? Then they can interrogate and question them, and they might find they were hired by a different NPC, and they were told to take this person to a specific spot. Maybe they use that person as bait. So there's a lot of different directions you could go in, just depending what your players come up with.
The specifics are pretty easy to figure out once you have, the goals and a jumping off point. But where you go from there is going to entirely be upon how the players, how those PCs decide to act in that moment. So that's the direction I would be looking at.
Right, and ultimately you're gonna go with, what is the goal of the Mind Flayers, because that's where your clues and your biggest hints are probably going to come from.
And Mind Flayers have very specific things. Do they want information? Do they want brains? Do they want slaves, or do they want more thralls, to further one of the other missions? So it's pretty cut straightforward.
So with that, hey, we've got a virtual Dragon's Horde of GM 911 videos that you can check out here.
Speaking of treasure, there is loads of goodies over on the Nerdarchy Patreon for players and DMs alike.
That's not all. We do weekly patron-only live chats, monthly giveaways that our patrons are automatically entered in, and more.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.